thank you very much for the welcome, Aled, and thank you, Jocelyn, for the start after the event today. It was July last year when the government was created. Jocelyn and I found ourselves at new desks, looking at the commitments in the One Wales document, looking at the capability, the capacity, the issues that we had in front of us, and it was pretty clear straight away that the scale of the challenges, even before the situation that we've had with credit over the last 6 months, even at that point, that the capabilities that we're looking at, the challenges, we could not proceed with more of the same. And we were getting the same messages back from the different interests within the sectors, the different stakeholders, that if we were going to raise this, we had to have a radical shift in the way all of us operated as delivery partners, and that we really needed to look fundamentally at the way we operated. In the externally facing context, that led to the commissioning of Sue and the team to produce the report that we're here to discuss today. Internally, that led to us looking at our own structures, our own culture as an organisation, and what we would need to change in order to rise to those new challenges. And what I want to do today, really, in this slot, is run through where we are on the implementation of those two strands, which we see as absolutely one process. Because if there's one message that comes out of the whole sort of document of the discussion, this is about cultural change. This is about working differently. And just to pick up the themes that we've had so far, I think particularly it's about being more strategic, being more agile, being more entrepreneurial, and being more sustainable in every sense of that word. Sustainable in terms of our environmental performance, and you're going to need to look at fuel poverty, for example, to see quite how directly significant that is for the people that we serve. But also in terms of the financial sustainability that is such a big issue at the moment, and what we bring to individuals and to communities. Because providing the roof is the easy thing at one level. But improving people's life choices, improving places, is what we really ought to be aspiring to. That's the real challenge going forward. So, let me tell you where we got to. Jocelyn mentioned the specific approach that we've taken. We've not gone for we have a series of recommendations, we will tick the boxes to say that we are proceeding to do something with these recommendations. We're not doing that. What we've done is invited you all to join us to work together to co-produce the response. And that co-production of the response is not about going through the recommendations. It is about looking at the change that the report is about and the big chunks of change. Yes, we will go through the recommendations, but the recommendations are a way into that change of working, and that's what we want to focus on. So we've got the five groups, which interestingly look spookily like the ones that we're breaking out into later, but not quite the same. We've got, the first one is better use of existing properties, and that is otherwise known as addressing the credit crunch, and that's where there's some real urgent things there. Jocelyn mentioned she wants to find a way of getting into this opportunity that's here in terms of the land and the properties that are there to be bought at the moment. But we know we can't do that in a way that we end up with stuff that we don't need in the wrong place, that will be the next burden or the next sink or state in terms of where we're looking at. So what the very urgent thing is for us to come to that first work stream with propositions about what those criteria look like, and to agree amongst ourselves what is a sensible strategic approach to taking that very immediate opportunity. I think that will be one of the big challenges for that group. There are others that you'll talk about in this session later on. The second one is the whole issue of affordable housing delivery, the process, the SHUG programme, and I think there are different levels of hit within that. There are some things I think we can do pretty quickly, and some things that Jocelyn's mentioned that we're already planning to do over the next months. But there are some really big questions about whether we have anything that looks anything like social housing going forward. We could have very different financial relationships on the way it turns to delivery. But those are not going to happen overnight, because they're about some of the fundamentals of the whole structure of the way housing operates. And we can't pull too many of the pickup sticks out at once without knowing exactly whether the whole thing stands. So those are things that will take a little longer. And I'm pleased to say that one will be led by the WRGA, specifically, as yes, Lisa nods, yes. Steve, does Steve nod? Yes, hi Steve. And Steve, I'm very grateful, is going to be the Senior Responsible Officer for taking that forward. We've got a session on performance and monitoring. There's a lot in Sue's report around whether we know what we need to know, whether we're looking at the right things, whether the way we assess performance is appropriate, both in terms of taking decisions, but also in terms of things like self-assessment and the like. And CHC, Andrew Lessett, hopefully, is going to lead on that one for us. There are two others. One is one of the urgent issues in terms of restructuring, and certainly for us internally, is regulatory function and the regulation across, and not just issues in relation to ourselves, but more widely. And lastly, although I noticed that this strangely seemed to have most people signed up for the workshop sessions afterwards, finance, a small matter, where we're looking, including looking over our shoulders at where England is at the moment. I mean, they've got, it's one of the things we were thinking out at the beginning, there's a very radical, if slightly baroque structure being erected in England at the moment. And some very interesting issues about use of local authority money emerging and the rest of it. We need to look at that, and we need to look at the opportunities there. So that's the strands. We've had, thank you very much, I think nominations from just about everybody who expressed an interest for people to serve in those individual groups. I know there's a couple of you who haven't. If you have your names but haven't confirmed them, Lisa Dobbins sitting in the front, or Kath Palmer over there, we're very happy to discuss that with you. But basically we're in shape in terms of who wants to participate. And I would hope that we will be having first meetings with papers with those proposals in the next few weeks. It's the nods again, which is always good. Let me talk just very briefly about the internal change. We kicked this off about the same time, late autumn, early winter of last year, really looking at what it meant to move to being essentially a full ministerial department, you know, with about a fifth of the commitments in one way was falling to this side. So a real challenge around that, and looking at where we needed to move, and it was very much around working smarter, working differently, being much more joined up about how we worked, and having a vision of housing as a whole. As Jocelyn said, this is you know, it's important we have a feel for the way in which our interventions work within the whole picture. So that's very important. What we are in the process of now is a full, formal organisational development project, which Kath Palmer here will be with you on the work stream around the use of existing properties is set and train. It will lead to a fundamental restructuring, essentially the proposition around policy, operations and regulation. They will need to work very closely together, but the key aim is that we have slim, outcome-focused operations which operate in the same way regardless of which bit of the background or engagement we're going with, and that we have policy that is working to the same purpose in a joined-up way, so it doesn't really matter which bit of the sector or whatever it is that we're dealing with, but it's working with common purpose. And we have a regulatory function that is fully staffed up, is there to support, and it will need support, a more entrepreneurial approach out there. We will need to be working with you more closely and be ready to give you slightly harsher messages sometimes, at the right time, if things are not quite working. But we need to make sure that's staffed up and is not deflected into other issues. That is its role. So there's a real synergy between the work that we're doing together in the co-production and that work internally, and they all come together over the next few months. So as Jocelyn said, the hard work starts now. I look forward to, if you probably thought of some questions that you would have asked Jocelyn, you can sort of now ask them me. Thank you very much.